Mrs. McCain, thank you for being my guest today and welcome on the program.
My pleasure.
It has been more than 1 year since Senator McCain passed away. Mm-hmm. How could you define the main pillars of his political legacy and the principles he acted upon?
Mm-hmm. Well, as you know, my husband was a great defender of democracy and of freedom. And his legacy, I believe, remains in countries like Georgia and other countries where he was influential in by the fact that there is a functioning democracy. It's not perfect, but a functioning democracy, and also where civil liberties and human rights and freedom are respected. I come to countries like this and other places that he was active, and it always gives me. It's a great honor for me to see his legacy actually put into action.
He was regarded by some people as one of the main hawks of the US politics. Do you agree with this assessment?
I agree to some, I do, but you know, the one thing about John is that it wasn't, the issues obviously were very important, but his mantra and who he was he stuck up for the little guy. So no matter what area or what issue it may have been in, he believed that defending the little guy against the big bad guy was the most important thing you could do.
Senator McCain ran for president in 2008 against Barack Obama. Mm-hmm. What was it like for you as a wife?
Mm-hmm. Well, presidential politics is always fun. You know, we joke and say it's a bit like a rugby match because it's rough and tumble. It's a great honor to be the nominee, as he was, of your party for the highest office in the land. And for me as his wife, I felt the same way. I tell people, and still do, that I had a front row seat to history. And to be able to be a part of something that shapes your nation, win or lose. And we knew, you know, that there's always the option, you know, something could happen, you're going to lose, somebody's going to lose. And in our case, it was us. But we ran a good race, as did President Obama. We learned a lot from it, and consequently, I think my husband was catapulted into his statesman. People believing he was a statesman and looking to him for those things.
But how much were you involved in the presidential campaign?
I was very involved with it. I traveled most of the days with him, and sometimes on my own. We'd separate out and do our own campaigns. It was very important for me to be with him, though, for many reasons, but primarily people around him were very good people, but sometimes I'd tell him a little more of the truth, you know, stuff that he needed to hear, whether the speech was good or bad. Or
Only about his speeches, or for example, it was a very controversial issue when he named Sarah Palin as a vice presidential nominee. What did you say then?
I was part of the process. I was in the meetings with them, and I respect my husband's decision. It was he took a chance, and she performed very well. I think the press was very unfair to her, and you know, we had a great race. We have no complaints and no regrets.
What was the most challenging moment for you in this presidential campaign?
Most challenging moment. There were several in there, but I think probably the most challenging would have been just maintaining a constant dignity every day. And by that I mean, you know, Twitter was just coming in to play, and social media was in its infancy, but you could see what was going to happen with it. And so the daily attacks were a little hard for me. And
on you personally, or
on both of us? Yeah, we're both fair game. We became very defensive when my children were brought into it, and you know, I don't think children should be a part of any of that. My husband and I were fair game, though.
What was the role of Senator McCain in the U.S. politics overall?
I believe my husband's role overall has been one of reminding people of why we're here and what we're doing, setting up politics aside from the really serious issues of the day. like freedom and democracy, like human rights. His role in normalization of Vietnam was very important. He had a much higher sense of what had taken place in Vietnam, and still felt that it was time that we normalized with him. He was very involved in that, and I was very proud of him for doing that. As you know, he was held for almost 6 years.
And do you think that that is his main achievement as a politician, that he was very much involved and he contributed to the normalization of the relationship with Vietnam?
I think it's one of the things. I think being involved in the country of Georgia and in the shaping of a new democracy that emerged out of everything. He was very involved in Ukraine, as you know. He believed in, as I said, in democracy, freedom, human rights, dignity for all. And so those are the kind of legacy things that I think he has left behind. And my role in all of this now is to make sure that his legacy continues in not only countries like this, but other fledgling countries around the world.
Do you carry on his legacy?
I do, yes.
Do you see any other politician who is carrying on his legacy in the United States?
There's many good people in the United States, but I share the last name, so I think I can carry it a little bit easier than some other people can. But we have some great people in our Senate and in our House.
But you do not think of a political career for yourself?
No. Having lost my children, having lost their father, and the person that was the leader of our family, it's been my role to make sure that my family is okay, and to continue John's legacy.
You have already mentioned Senator McCain's role in shaping new democracies in Ukraine and Georgia, but what was his role and impact on the US-Russia relations? Mm-hmm.
Well, as you know, my husband was very brutally honest about his feelings towards Russia, and in particular, of course, Putin. I think his statements were correct. I think his outward disgust at some of the things that Russia was doing and have been doing, and being able to call them out, I think that was very important, and it certainly put the United States and, of course, my husband on Mr. Putin's radar as well. But those kinds of things are the things that I think were most important, and the things that he was never afraid to call it as it was. He had many names, of course, and many things that he used, but most importantly, the lack of human rights, the lack of civility in politics, and most importantly, the thuggish behavior that has occurred and come out of Russia as a whole.
Did he share with you what he didn't like in Putin the most? Why are you laughing?
Of course we talked about it. Putin and Putin's behavior towards the United States, and particularly towards Crimea and other places, as you know far better than I do, what has occurred. Those kinds of things were an insult to my husband's thought on and who he was, who he stood for, like I said, freedom, democracy. So when those things occurred and continue to occur, he would be very vocal at home about it and wanted to talk about Russia and talk about Putin. It was interesting times.
What was his relationship with Boris Yeltsin? I know that you traveled to Russia back then.
Right, we both did then. I don't remember my husband having a personal relationship with Boris Yeltsin. I know that there was, plenty of discussions back and forth, in the press towards each other and towards each other's countries as well. But I don't remember him having a personal relationship.
Whom American politician did he praise?
Oh, American politicians?
Yes.
Gosh. As you know, Ted Kennedy was a very close friend of my husband, and they agreed on almost nothing, but they were very good friends. And the fights that would take place on the floor of the Senate were fights that both he and Ted enjoyed. They were not personal. They were about the issues. They were about what, you know, their views of what was best for the United States of America. I think Ted and my husband were kind of the lions of the Senate, and the last lions of the Senate, because they could work together, even though they were polar opposites of what they believed politically. They could work together and get things done. And I think we're lacking in that a little bit now.
And you've mentioned that he was very active in Ukraine, in Georgia, and he had an impact on the US-Russia relations. And among politicians of the post-Soviet countries, whom he liked most?
Oh, gosh.
He didn't like Putin, that's...
That's very clear, he didn't. I think, in his case, I think he enjoyed and respected the new leaders that emerged out of both many countries within the region, and he respected them for their tenacity and for their bravery. And so I don't know that there would be any one that I could pick out that he enjoyed more than any others. He certainly respected and loved your father, as you know.
That I know, and I interviewed your husband, and we spoke about my father as well. And I'm very thankful for him because he kept his legacy. My last question is about your personal professional aspirations, because I know that you're a businesswoman, a philanthropist. What are you up to right now?
Yeah. Well, you're correct. I'm very busy.
I can imagine.
I do. I have, you know, as you know, I run my family business at home. That keeps me very busy. And I also, keeping John's legacy alive has been very important to me and important to the family. We have lots of things planned not only to continue the legacy but build on it. Libraries and you know, of course the McCain Institute is a big one. And so I view my role as in making sure that the world does not forget what he stood for and what he believed in and why and the importance of it. All those things combined make up his legacy and make up who he was.
Ms. McCain, thank you very much.
Thank you.
For your
My
time.
pleasure.
Thank you.